I found the filing on a Tuesday. That matters less than it should, but I keep coming back to it. The way a whole people's survival turned on which day I happened to pull the raw feed. I was 40 hours out from a commercial soil survey contract on Knelt, running baseline calibrations on my dispersal rig, and I had the deprecated auxiliary bands open because I like to read while the sensor's warm. Old habit. Most of what comes through on those frequencies is equipment noise and outdated advisories. Nothing urgent. Nothing personal. The Ravin filing was personal. It came through as a Concord Form 11C, which is a standardized substrate health report, the kind any agricultural settlement can submit if their growing medium shows sustained deviation from baseline. 3 of them filed over 26 months, each one a little shorter than the last, each one stamped with the same Concord classification in the response field: photosynthetic adequate, self-sustaining, no AID, INDICATED. I read the mineral data 3 times. Then I canceled my contract, filed a deviation notice with the commercial routing office, and changed course for Kesorvith. The Ravin are photosynthetic. That much is true. Their skin absorbs broad-spectrum light through a chlorophyll analog layered beneath an amber dermal membrane, and in good conditions it provides roughly 60% of their caloric needs. The Concord's classification system sees that number and checks a box: photosynthetic adequate. But the other 40%, the trace minerals, the calcium silicate compounds, the deep substrate micronutrients their root vein capillaries absorb through hours of direct soil contact each day, those don't appear on a Concord classification form. There is no box for them. The form was designed for species that eat or species that photosynthesize, and the Ravin do both, so they fall into a gap the paperwork never imagined. 3 times the Concord looked at them, saw the photosynthesis, and stopped reading. I knew what I was going to find before I landed. The fold sits in a natural depression on Kesorvith's dry plateau, a sunken basin roughly 300 meters across, roofed with translucent thermal panels that let the daylight through. From above, it looks like a lens of pale gold set into rust-colored stone. Rows of amber and ochre growth substrate in raised beds, nutrient channels cut into the basin floor, solar collectors arrayed along the eastern wall. 47 Ravin live there. They tend the soil the way a surgeon tends a patient, daily, attentively, with an intimacy that borders on devotion. When I came down the basin ramp with my kit, the elder was waiting. Sethan Orvith is tall even for a Ravin, 2¼ meters, maybe more. His skin is the color of late afternoon light through amber glass, and the root vein capillaries beneath it run in branching patterns from his temples to his fingertips, dark gold against pale gold. He watched me descend the ramp with my 2 cases and my sensor package, and he did not look surprised. He looked like a man who had stopped being surprised a long time ago. "You are the survey technician," he said. His voice was dry and unhurried. "Xenobotanist," I said. "Civilian contract, I read your filings." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We have been classified 3 times. The Concord considers our substrate adequate." "I know what the Concord considers." "Then you know there is nothing to report." I set my cases down on the basin floor. The soil under my boots was dry and chalate pale, not the warm amber it should have been, not the deep living ochre of healthy Ravin substrate. It looked like old calcium powder. It looked like something that had been asked to give and give and give and had finally, quietly stopped. "May I see it?" I asked. He studied me for a long time. I have been studied by a lot of people: contract supervisors, guild inspectors, routing clerks who want to know why a soil scientist is requesting a deviation from a paying job to visit a settlement the Concord has classified as self-sustaining. Sethan's look was different. It was the look of someone deciding whether it was worse to hope again or to keep the hope buried. He stepped aside. I knelt in the soil. The sensor package is a simple thing, a spectral probe, a mineral density mapper, and a moisture gradient reader, all linked to a handheld display. I pushed the probe into the substrate and watched the numbers build. Calcium silicate almost unreadable, trace magnesium negligible, iron oxide micronutrient concentration, the compound their capillaries need most, was at 11% of baseline. The depletion curve was smooth and steep and terminal, not a crash, not a sudden event. Just a slow, steady withdrawal of everything the soil had left to give, drawn down over years by a population that had no other source and no way to replenish what they took. They were starving, all 47 of them standing in daylight, photosynthesizing just fine, slowly starving in soil that had nothing left. I turned the display toward Sethan. He looked at it for a long time. I don't know what he saw, the numbers, or the confirmation of something he had already known in his body for years. His root veins pulsed once faintly, the way a hand might tremble. "The Concord does not measure this," he said. "No," I said, "they don't." He didn't ask me what I was going to do. He didn't ask me to stay. He stood at the edge of his own failing ground and watched me open my first case, and he didn't say a word. The amendment cartridges are not complicated. Compressed mineral substrate, calcium silicate, iron oxide, magnesium compound, phosphate in stabilized pellet form, designed to dissolve slowly into the growing medium over weeks. I carried 16 in my kit, enough for maybe a third of the fold. I started at the eastern beds, where the depletion curve was steepest and the substrate was nearly calcium white, and I worked the cartridges into the soil with my hands. It took 3 hours to do the first section. By then, the ravine had gathered. They came in ones and twos, silent, standing at the edges of the beds I was working. They watched me kneel in their soil with my bare hands and push mineral pellets into ground their own capillaries had drained dry. I don't know what that looked like to them, a stranger, down on her knees in their most intimate space, feeding their ground the way you would feed a person who could not feed herself. Some of them knelt near me, not helping, just close. An older woman with root veins so pale they were almost white pressed her palm flat to the soil beside the bed. I had just amended and held it there for a long time, her eyes closed, her face very still. I do not know what she felt. I know what the sensor read 3 days later, a slow, measurable rise in trace mineral concentration across the eastern section, enough to register, enough to matter. I filed for a resupply drop the same day. 48 additional amendment cartridges, a mineral dispersal frame, and a subsurface infusion rig rated for 300 meters of bed. The routing office flagged the order as non-contract and asked for a billing account. I gave them mine. The work took 19 days. I amended every bed in the fold, installed the dispersal frame along the basin's central channel, calibrated the infusion rig to release iron oxide compound on a 60-day cycle, and ran a full substrate analysis on every growing section. On the 11th day, I noticed the soil in the eastern beds had shifted color, not much, just a shade from chalite white to something warmer, pale amber, the first faint suggestion of what it had been. On the 14th day, Sethan knelt beside me while I was calibrating the western frame. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "You have been here 2 weeks. Yes. Your contract is elsewhere." I canceled the contract. He looked at the soil, then at me. "Why?" I thought about it. I thought about the 3 filings and the 3 stamps and the box on the Concord form that doesn't exist. I thought about the depletion curve, that smooth, terminal line, and the woman who pressed her palm to the amended soil and closed her eyes. "Because I could read the filing," I said, "and I knew what it meant." He nodded once. He didn't say thank you. He did something else. The ravine keep a root log, not a written record, not a digital file, but a mineral signature embedded in the soil itself. A specific compound, pressed into the substrate at a specific depth, readable by any ravine capillary for generations. It is how they record the things that matter. The founding of the fold, the first season's yield, the names of those who kept the ground alive. On the 19th day, Sethan knelt at the head of the eastern bed, the first one I had amended, the one where the soil had gone from white to amber, and pressed a small pellet of trace mineral compound into the substrate. My name, encoded in a language I cannot read, sunk into soil I had fed with my own hands. I filed a 6-month remediation residency that evening. The commercial routing office asked for a reason. I wrote, ongoing substrate stabilization, single-party maintenance, no projected end date. The fold is quiet in the mornings. The light comes through the thermal panels in long amber columns, and the soil is warm under my knees, and the ravin walk barefoot through the beds with their root veins open to the ground, drawing up what I put there. I am not a rescuer. I am not a fleet. I am a soil scientist with a sensor package and a bag of mineral cartridges, kneeling in someone else's ground because I could read what the Concord couldn't. The soil is turning amber again. That is enough.